Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Life by Design podcast. On this week's episode, I talk with business coach and longtime friend, Dan Henderson. Dan is a high performance coach helping fitness professionals and gym owners have more profit, impact, and freedom. In this week's episode, expect to learn the importance of being present as a family man, structuring your perfect week, shiny object syndrome, the future of the fitness industry, shifting your identity, and much, much more. Enjoy the episode. Now, guys, before we start this week's episode of the podcast, I want to talk to you about the Life by Design Mastermind. The Life by Design Mastermind is the mastermind for go-getters and high achievers who are looking to create a more successful, fulfilling, and balanced life by design. If you're serious about transforming your life, achieving your goals, and living a life on your terms, then the Life by Design is your golden ticket. Head over to the show notes and click on the link for more details about the program. Mr. Daniel Henderson, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. BWT, great to be here.
Does anyone call you Daniel?
A few people, but Mum, my partner when I'm in trouble, but that's about the extent of it.
It is a very common theme, isn't it, when you're in trouble? I don't know where that originated from. So we'll go back to Dan Henderson. Mate, how long have we known each other? 15 years?
Yeah, about 15 years. I was reflecting on this the other day and the good old Levity Health days. And that's where you and I met and struck up a really good friendship in Bondi Junction as we were both aspiring fitness business owners and personal trainers and had a lot of good times.
A lot has changed in 15 years, which we may touch on some of those things today. But, mate, before we kick into everything that you've got to say and the wisdom that you've got to bring, can you give the guys a 60 to 90 second spiel of who you are and what's got you to where you are today?
Yeah, certainly. So I am a family man. I've got 3 beautiful children. I live in Sydney's glorious eastern suburbs at Maroubra Beach. I like to keep fit and active by going outside as much as I can. So I got in a quick little run this morning prior to this podcast. I love business. I love the game of business. And in particular, I love the fitness industry. So I have 3 businesses. I've had about 6 or 7 over the 15 years. And every single one of them has been within the fitness industry itself. And where I spend most of my time these days is coaching other fitness business owners, just so they can have 3 things primarily. They can have more impact, they can have more income, and they can have more freedom.
Very succinct. And what I noticed in that introduction, which in the 97 episodes that we've done, I think you're the first one to do this, is you reeled off, I'm a family man before anything else, which was really interesting. What's your, I don't know if that's a conscious thought, but what do you believe to be behind that?
Yeah, it wasn't a conscious thought whatsoever, but I absolutely love being a dad. I feel like it's a real privilege to be a dad. I aspire to be a great role model to my kids each and every day, also to be a great partner. And so I think that's just first and foremost in my mind, because I'm consciously thinking about how I can show up. I think about how I can show up every day in all facets of life, but particularly as a parent. Like I had breakfast with my son this morning, and one of the things I'm very conscious about as I do is not to pick up my phone. So how do I show up and be a real present, mindful dad in that instant? You know, I was getting my daughter, my little girl, changed this morning. She's off to preschool, and again, really just making sure that I can bring a little joy and that she can feel the love from me in that relationship. So I think it's just a consciousness at the moment.
I told you this podcast could go anywhere.
Oh, you did. You warned me.
We're already doing it. Where do you think that stems from? Is it from your own experience? Is it, reflecting on your experience growing up and not receiving that yourself? Where is that real conscious thought around being present stem from, do you think?
I think it comes from 2 spaces. I think number one is I love business, but can be all too consumed by it. And so I'm mindful of that. So there's been many instances where I have robbed beautiful moments from my children because I've gone and checked an email, I've gone and checked social media, I've taken a sales call or a call from a client, and I've compromised the time right there, right then with my children. And I'm like, no, show up, be better than that. because that's not fair to them. And what kind of role model are you in that instance? I think the second thing does come from a little bit of childhood. So I had a great childhood. I can't complain. I had two loving parents, and they gave me, they gave me a quality education and a good life. But my dad was a workaholic, and I never really used to see him much. So, never see him at sporting games, never used to see him on weekends. And I wanted to, and that stayed with me. And so when I became a dad, I was like, I love that he wanted to provide for us. I know that he loves, me and my sister as well, but I don't want to make the same compromises and sacrifices that he did, because I didn't think they were necessary either. And so I look at him and go, in many ways, you're a good role model. In other ways, you weren't. Like, I want to go, all right, this is how I can be an even better dad than what you were.
As someone who runs 3 businesses, what's that journey been like how old's your eldest?
So I've got a stepdaughter that's 14, and then I've got a son that's 8 and a daughter that's 4.
So what's that process been like for you with 3 businesses and at different stages, very much in their startup phase, and the push and pull of I'm a business owner, I need to fucking grind hard, and I'm a dad? What happens for you in that inner dialogue? How do you structure your week? What boundaries have you had to implement? What have you had to change as you've, come to light of potentially not showing up the way that you wanted to?
Yeah, I love that question, because there's a lot to that. There's a lot to unpack that. And I think James Clear's 4 burners theory was really helpful for me during this, in that, if, for those that aren't familiar with it, there's 4 main areas of life, work and family being 2 of those. And if you want to be outstanding, it's very, very hard to focus on more than 2 burners at a time. And so there's been different stages of life where one of those burners has been work and family is less so. And there's other stages where family is going to take a higher priority. But what has helped me is structure. So structure is very, very important. So I follow a fairly, it's a fluid framework, but it's called the Perfect Week Formula, taught to me by mentor friend Craig Ballantyne, in terms of how to structure the week. And you put your first things first. So if family is one of your highest values, then making sure that that's reflected by going into the diary first and foremost. So there's going to be elements for me that are like, I'm never, ever going to dilute. Like, I'm going to have breakfast with my son on Thursdays. I'm going to take my baby girl to ballet on Saturday mornings. I'm going to have a date night every single month. Like, they're the big rocks that are going in the diary. So no matter how busy work is, we're still going to have those moments. I think the other thing that it's made me do as I've become older and time, I've got many competing variables around time, is around the utilization of it and just being smarter as a business owner, because my businesses are bigger than they've ever been. Yet I would say that I'm spending more time with my family than ever. So how have I been able to do that is just show up. I'm a better leader. So I'm a better communicator than I once was. I still have a long way to go. I'm much better in managing people and getting better at delegation, but also determining what's, kind of like Eisenhower's matrix, where what's urgent and what's important, and making sure that the appropriate activities are being spent in the really important, non-urgent or important urgent times.
How has that changed for you? And how often do you reassess, let's say, your perfect week? So as your kids get older, maybe things change as your businesses develop and they're not necessarily in their infant stages, maybe your role changes. How often do you reflect on, that perfect week and what needs to change?
Yeah, so formally I'm going to look at it every quarter. So I work in 90-day sprints. I work in 90-day sprints with my personal goals, relationship goals, fitness goals, business goals. And I'm going to look at my perfect week formula to make sure that it's relevant and aligned and congruent with those goals. But I'll also feel it on a week-to-week basis. If I feel this tension, like, if I'm feeling just overwhelmed and super stressed and super busy, then I know that I've got a framework and a structure that's not working for me at this point in time, because, I'm trying to race from one thing to the other, and I end up just doing multiple things pretty badly, as opposed to just trying to do less. So then I'll reassess it at that point in time. And, even I was going to run the half marathon in the Goldie a few weeks ago, and I was just looking, I was just like, I just don't have the capacity right now to do that. So I'm okay to sacrifice that, because what's more important right now is some business goals that I've got to hit, but also some family goals as well.
As someone who's got 3 kids and 3 businesses and a lot of runs on the board in terms of how much time you spent in the game, what would be your recommendation for the juggling act and potentially someone that's coming in, maybe even in their startup phase and trying to juggle these things?
Yeah. Number one, just really embrace structure would be my first one. So if you're not knowing how your week or your days look, then quite often the days can run you. You'll be very reactive. You won't prioritize accordingly. So I love the structure of planning my week in advance, planning my days in advance, and simplifying it as well, and just going, all right, if there's 3 things I have to do from a business perspective, 3 things from a personal family perspective over the course of the week that determines whether it's successful or not, what are those? And then at this, I have a power list. Andy Frazilla talks about it, but I had it well before him, is 3 things every day that will determine whether it's a successful day. And so I think structure and simplification would be my biggest pearls of wisdom around it, because when you don't have structure, then you can feel like the busy fool on the hamster wheel time and time again. And it just creates a lot of overwhelm, because you're working, but you don't have a whole ton to show for it. And also what that structure does is it leverages like really good productivity principles like Parkinson's law, where if you're only allocating, 90 minutes, for example, to let's just say it's like marketing, for example, then you're going to make sure that you get it done within that 90 minutes. You're not going to let that bleed out for 3, 4, 5 hours. So that would be one side. The second side would just be like, stop making life hard on yourself by trying to do too much. Like, just break it down. So, probably like the biggest problem that I see with a lot of business owners in particular is they're chasing so many shiny objects. There's so many projects on the table. And if they just when identified what are the small hinges that are going to swing the biggest doors, what are the things that are going to have the biggest impact, then they're going to be a lot more impactful.
Talking of shiny objects, you mentioned that you now have 3 businesses, one that you bought into recently, Filex, which I love that you bought into that. Firstly, what is Filex for those outside the fitness space? And secondly, what process do you go through in determining what is a good business to buy?
Yeah. So Filex it's a fitness convention. It's the most established fitness convention within our industry. It's been around for over 30 years. Traditionally, they had one major event every year that it was really the fitness industry event that everyone would go to. Times have changed a little bit and we're reinventing it at the moment. And for me, when assessing the value of a business, I wanted to make sure, Jim Collins talks about this, the flywheel. I wanted to make sure that it fit within the flywheel. So my primary business is a coaching consulting business for fitness business owners. Filex is a convention for fitness professionals. And so immediately I could see that was going to help. They were going to complement one another by being a shareholder and playing an active day-to-day role in Filex. It was going to add credibility to our fitness consulting business, Fitness Profit, but it was also going to afford us an opportunity to get in front of a lot more people and showcase our expertise. So for me, the value in that business wasn't necessarily on a profit and loss statement or a balance sheet. It wasn't, because it was an events business that had just been through COVID. It wasn't that pretty on paper, but I saw the opportunity to reinvent it. I saw the opportunity in its brand equity, but I also saw the opportunity in how it could feed our flywheel. And so now we've got this little ecosystem of businesses that complement one another. And so that's how I assessed it, a little away from the non-traditional, where I'm not looking at net profit ratios, I'm not looking at EBITDA or anything like that. I'm looking at what are the other assets within the business and opportunities.
There's been a few things happening in the world over the last 3 to 4 years. How do you see that impacting the fitness space? And what are you predicting or forecasting over the next 3 to 4 years?
Yeah, so it's been really interesting. I've loved just seeing how the industry has adjusted, adapted, innovated. I mean, we saw this huge, when the pandemic hit, we saw this huge rush to online and virtual training. And we saw these behemoths being born out of it, like Peloton and the like. What has been really comforting for me, because I've always been a real bricks and mortar, face-to-face, belly-to-belly kind of guy, has been the rebound and face-to-face, because I think nothing replaces that human interaction and that level of community. And so that's been really exciting to see. However, online is now there, and the consumer has been accelerated a number of years and utilizing the apps and just being comfortable with it. So now that's there to complement the face-to-face product and service. And so now you've got to be better as an operator. You can't just have a face-to-face product. You need to now integrate the power of online. AI is becoming more and more prevalent within it as well. So that's important. There's been a huge amount of professionalism since you and I were started in the industry. Like, there's a lot more competition than there's ever been. You just look around and you can see that, but there's a lot of really professional competition. So you're seeing beautiful fit outs, great technology. You're seeing some really wonderful concepts at the moment. And so what that means is the product, the experience, the service, the results are getting better. And so as an operator, you have to be at top of your game, because the competition is fierce right now. So if you're not a very good business operator, you're going to struggle. Wherein previously you would have got by being a good bloke and, being the only shop in town. Where the industry is moving more and more towards is an integration between fitness and wellness. And we're really starting to see it on the recovery side of things. So, a lot of gyms are now opening recovery spaces, recovery zones. They're starting to integrate cold water immersion, breath work, saunas. You're starting to see Normatech in lots of places, and just starting to talk about recovery. And there's this integration happening, and it's only going to become more profound over the next few years. Like, it's incredible how quickly it's moved. We have a number of clients that have added these products and services into their own offering, and there's a real demand for it at the moment.
So what would that look like? Because I've got a couple of friends, I'm not going to go too much into detail because they're going down this path and they want to keep things tight-lipped for now. But what do you imagine that looking like? Let's say, for example, you've got a group fitness dynamic or fitness studio and you wanted to implement, breath work. Are they adding parts on? Are they pushing everything aside and doing extra breath work sessions? Are they adding it on to the end of the sessions? How do you see that kind of format playing out?
Look, I think it's a little bit of both. I think it's integrating within the core product. I've never experienced it, but I was over at an international conference in Singapore just a few weeks ago, and the creator of Airlocker was in there. And one of the things that they do is they lie down, they do some breath work, and they do some gratitude. It's this kind of end of session ritual. And I was like, that's really cool. And people really appreciate it. So I think we're hearing more about that, where they're integrating it into the core service offering, but they're also layering it on top of. And so, there's some really cool places in Brisbane. There's a gym called Total Fusion that's, got everything, and they've got this recovery center in addition to their main gym offering. It's a separate subscription, separate membership. I just joined the sporting club over at the Sydney Football Stadium, and, they've got their hot and cold plunge pools. They've got infrared saunas. They've got traditional saunas. They've got steam rooms. So they're starting to just integrate it in addition to. And there just seems to be a lot more awareness, which, I mean, for people like you and I, we've been in this space for a little bit longer, but it's now coming into general population. And I think there's going to be opportunities on both sides. A, how do you integrate it into your core offering? B, how do you create a separate complementary revenue stream?
What do you see as the potential standouts, say over the next 3 to 5 years, as a gym owner? And one of the things that you mentioned is back in our day, you could get away with being owner, operator and, running fun workouts and whatever else. But these days, it really needs to be quite a polished service or product that you're offering. What do you see as the little tweaks that your average gym studio might be able to make over the next, maybe 3 to 5 years, isn't even too far away, 1 to 3 years, that will hold them in good stead?
Yeah, look, I think there's a few. I mean, some of these are not new. Some of these are just more important than they've ever been right now. So I'll start with the first, which is something that's held me in good stead as a gym owner for the best part of the last 15 years, and that's really like, how do you build it as a third space? How do you build that tribe with like-minded values that not only want to sweat with each other, but also want to hang out, have a laugh as well? So how do you integrate that social connection side and become a tribe of like-minded people? That's going to be more and more important. And there's lots of different ways that you can do that. But if you don't have a strategy around that and you haven't clearly defined who you are, what your DNA is, and who you want to attract, then you need to do so. In addition to that, you need to embrace technology. Like, there's so much good tech that's really cost effective and simple to implement. I believe, a wearable is really important in enhancing the experience. You can just get so much more data. All the data shows that it's great for retention, client experience, adherence, also frequency of use of the facility itself. So you need to be enhancing your technology through A, a wearable, but B, just some of the other technology like online apps to complement. So you're now supporting people outside of the sessions, not within the sessions themselves. There's been some really interesting studies being done where 40% of people want to train outside of their primary gym, but 80% of them want to be recognized for that. So what technology do you have in place that will enable you to do so? So that would be the second side. And then the third would be really... This one's probably a little bit more progressive, but you've got to listen to what the population wants. And there's a few things with Gen Zs in particular, which are the largest, most health conscious demographic population that we've ever had. And so they want a lot of environmentally friendly spaces. They're more environmentally conscious than any other generation. They are embracing strength training, and it's no longer just about fat loss. Fat loss, for the first ever time in a number of surveys, is not the number one outcome that the consumer wants anymore. They now want to feel good. So as a service provider, what are you doing to elicit and engineer that?
If you're starting again as a fitness business owner, what would you be doing?
I would be having a very strength-oriented product. I would be making sure that if I was to do it, I would keep it. I would go less, I'd go smaller, not bigger. So, I'd go to 150 members, really tight tribe, because that way you can have really deep embedded relationships with everybody there. I would make it as much about the social and the time outside of the gym as I would inside of the gym. I would layer in some really simple technology to enhance the experience and the results that they get. I would build a space that was uplifting, enticing, but at the same time environmentally friendly. Yeah, that's where I would be going. If I was to start a brand new business tomorrow, that's what it would look like.
And for yourself personally, what do you see as your own path over the next kind of 1 to 3 years? What are you feeling most called to?
I'm absolutely loving the coaching space at the moment. I've been in it for 5 years. I mean, you've presented for me on a couple of occasions, but 2 years ago, I really made the call to invest full time into this by selling my major education company and consolidating my time so I could be more in this space. And as a result, we've gone from strength to strength. I've got a team of coaches that's incredible. And so I love the coaching space, but even for me, it's a transition from being a technician, because I have been doing a lot of coaching, into more of a leadership, thought leader, innovator in this space, so we can continue to progress and grow as a business and make sure that the products are getting the best possible results for our clients.
It's a significant thing that you just said, which has really been playing on my mind recently. And I think a lot of people underestimate that. And that being, in order for you to shift, you often have to shift a level of identity. And in order to shift a level of identity, there often has to be a shifting in behaviors. So you spoke really nicely from the technician to the leader. How has that looked in terms of where you put your time, energy, and behaviors?
Yeah, I think it's when I look at, I mean, I have a bias towards the fitness industry. So, but I think it's true in all businesses, is quite often the bottleneck and the invisible ceiling in the business isn't actually like a lack of knowledge. It is quite often the inability to shift your identity and become the manager, then the leader that you need to be. And so you identify as a technician. The technician is your comfort zone. You will quite often regress to those technician activities, and you won't level up into that next space. And I know that's very true. I say that because it's been very true of me, is that's my default. I speak to a prospect and I just want to jump in and I want to help them, and it was the same as me from a training side. Like I just wanted to get my hands and fix them. But that's going to keep you stuck at a certain point. And that's not wrong. Like if you want to be a technician and you want to be the world's best technician, great. But if you do want to level up in business, then you then need to shift your identity and become a leader. And it's a very different set of skills, but they're malleable. They're skills, they're soft skills, they're malleable skills that can be learnt. And so now you need to, and it's cliche, but it's like, all right, I'm going to do a little less of working on this business right now. Sorry, in this business right now. I'm now going to start to work on it. Well, what does that look like? Well, as a, leadership and management are very, very different, but they're both very important in a small business, because the likelihood is you're going to be doing lots of both. So leadership is getting really clear about what you want for your business, like crystal clear around the vision, the goals, and what it looks like. But more than that, it's the ability to communicate that and infuse that into your people so they're enthusiastic, they're excited, they're empowered to get on board and move forward. It is the ability to empathize and communicate with your people and understand them and understand their strengths and their weaknesses, and just to help them grow and realize their potential and listen to them and help them become the best version they can be. It's about being emotionally resilient. It's about self-leadership and showing up as a better version of yourself each and every day. That's what leadership is. Now, management is more the day-to-day actions to make that leadership or that vision come to realization. So management is more around your systems and your processes and your KPIs and your meetings and your job descriptions and the cogs that make it happen. Now, 40% of people in management positions are put there without the skills to execute the position. It's like us when we're ascending. If we don't shift the identity and go, yes, I'm a leader, then we're not going to go and learn those skills, or we're going to end up doing it quite badly. So I'll give you a really quick example. Is I had a call yesterday from a gentleman, and he'd hired 3 team members, and every single one of those team members had left. And I said, it's just because you just don't have the skills yet. So are you going to identify as a leader, as a manager? Are you going to shift And are you then going to make a commitment to learn those skills? Because you can sit here and say it doesn't work, hiring staff doesn't work, building a team doesn't work, or you can take direct responsibility and become the person you need to be, because it does work, but it's going to require a shift in you.
And this is red hot for me right now, so I'm really enjoying this. It's if you're not sure, because a lot of people like identity. I think I'm A and B, but if you did a recce on your time, in terms of you did like a little, a time recce for a week or two, you would get an idea of where your identity is. And exactly as you said, sometimes it's challenging when we step up a level and we're new in the space of CEO energy, entrepreneur energy, and we default back. And I see it a lot, even in the coaching space, and I'm guilty of this as well. In hindsight, my last 3 years, I've been a researcher, and as I grow in the coaching space, I needed to do that. But in order to go from the researcher to the coach to the business owner, entrepreneur, whatever kind of title resonates, there needs to be a shift in time, energy, and attention. And, exactly like you and I, there's definitely a time and a place where you need to, be the technician or be the researcher when you're starting out. Like, you need to have skills. But at some stage, making that jump is important. Is there a timeline that you encourage these guys to shift their identity? Is there any process in which you see the right way for them?
Look, in a fitness business, I can usually identify it, right? So it's normally going to happen once they start to hit about $200,000 to $300,000 in revenue. And I go, right now, the gap that's missing between you and the guy that's doing $500,000 plus and seven figures is they're just far better leaders and managers than you are right now. And so right now you've got to shift, you've got to shift your identity, and then you've got to learn the skills to be able to execute those roles within that new identity itself. And so they're just hitting this invisible ceiling. Like, I see it every time. And it's actually one of the things I'm really proud about in our coaching, because a lot of coaches are very tactical, like run this campaign and you'll generate lots of leads and sales and members, where we dive deep. Like, if you go have a look at our back end LMS, there's a lot of training on management and leadership, because I know that they're the things that most people lack. That's becoming a business owner. Most people say they're a business owner. They have a job, right? That's the reality. And so to make the shift from job to business owner, you've got to create leverage. To create leverage, you've got to manage and lead people. In most cases, in service-based industries like coaching, that's the way to do so. And if you don't learn those skills, then you're going to be stuck. So that's how I identify it.
Mate, there's a lot of juice in that. For those listening, I recommend you replay that a couple of times, because there's a lot in what he's just had to say. Mate, for people who want to find out more about you, the work that you do, your services, where's the best spot for them to find you?
Yeah, so on social channels, it is under Daniel, because Dan Henderson is a very famous UFC fighter. So I'm a little bit all over the place in terms of my socials. So it's Coach Dan Henderson on IG. On Facebook, it is Daniel Henderson. We just launched a website yesterday, fitnessprofit.com.au. So you can always hit me up through there as well. But if anything at all has resonated, or you just want to connect, would love to do so. This is one of my favorite parts about sharing, is just connecting with other like-minded people.
Well, mate, I'm glad it was the podcast that brought us back together after a few years apart, but always good to see you, albeit you're in Sydney and I'm in Byron, but good to see what you're doing and the impact that you're having. And no one deserves it more. It's been 15 years in the space, and I don't know what the average lifespan of a trainer is these days, but I know it used to be 18 months. So you've done your reps, and the results that you continue to get for both yourself and other business owners speaks volumes as well.
Mate, thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you to all those that listen today as well.